Hey everybody, it's Dr. Michaela Keegan-Yadley here, Michaela from here on out, and I've spent the last 20 years in education really honing my craft in connecting with other people, in connecting with students and connecting with teachers and bringing high quality instruction and professional learning to them. I'm excited to take that on the road and into podcast world so that I can reach more people across the country. And really what I set out to do is to bring you incredible value through either my own insights and especially insights of others who have a lot to offer and share. It's been a tough couple of years in education. Let's have some fun. Let's learn a lot. Reach out to me if you ever have anything you want me to cover on this. And until I hear from you, enjoy our episodes. This podcast episode is brought to you by the 3D Printing Man. Get everything from custom food bowls for your pets to chore lists for your family in more than 15 vibrant colors, all custom designed. Visit his store on Etsy by searching The 3D Printing Man, all one word. Again, that's The 3D Printing Man on Etsy and get 10% off with the code DISSECTED. All right, before we jump into today's episode, I just want to let you know I am so excited to officially announce our summer live free virtual event titled Self-Taught: How to Have the Year You Want Next Year. I'm really excited because I know that teachers want to have a joyful year where they're equipped to handle all of the more challenging things that COVID and the pandemic learning year has brought to us. And I'm excited to actually help that happen. So you can go to drkeeganyadley.com. I'm going to mention it in our episodes also. And you can sign up for this free live event. I'll send you reminders about it. It's really going to be amazing because what I want more than anything is for you to have the transformation that you want, which is enjoying teaching again and being equipped to handle the new challenges that we have in the face of what's happened over the past couple of years. But without further ado, let's get right into our episode. Happy Tuesday, everybody. We are back for another episode of the Dissect Ed podcast. And as you may remember, we are in our summer series where we explore what has kept teachers excited about, passionate about, and feeling joyful about teaching in all of the challenges that the last couple of years have brought, and really all the changes in education over the past, I'd say 5 to 10 years. There's a lot that can bring us down. And today we connect with Vanessa Drew. She is a French teacher and Indigenous Studies teacher in British Columbia. And she explains to us that it's really her connection with her students, yes, and to her school community on a broader level, but really her connection in her classroom with her students that keeps her feeling joyful and motivated each day. And so I encourage you that if that is you, listen to Vanessa because you'll probably relate very well to this episode. And if that's something that is a struggle for you, listen to the conversation that Vanessa and I have about some of the ways that she develops that strong relationship with her students, because as I'm finding and speaking with lots of teachers over the past year, the common thread that has kept teachers able to push through some really stressful, tough times is knowing that they have that strong connection with the kids in their class. And so this is one way that we talk about it in this episode today. So without further ado, here is Vanessa. All right, welcome back, everybody. Today we have the honor of being with Vanessa Drew. She's a high school French and Indigenous Studies teacher. She's all the way from British Columbia, Canada. I got that right, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yes. Okay, good. And I'm really excited because I've been actually, if you've been listening, I'm on my TikTok journey, and I have found a couple of amazing people, and Vanessa's one of them. So I'm going to turn it right over to you, Vanessa, and ask you to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me and for allowing me to share this platform and this space with you. Yeah, so I'm a mother of 2 grown children, and French and English are my teachable subjects. And now with some curriculum changes here in British Columbia, we now have an Indigenous Studies portion, and I am in love with French and with English and French grammar. And I'm not making that part up. I actually
I
love the
believe
grammar
you.
aspect of it. And I'm really just so interested in connecting with my kids, and it's not about memorizing things so they can do well on the test. And so, so I just found over the last few years, you mentioned a word in the introduction there, journey. And I feel like even though I'm middle-aged, I've been teaching for 16 years. I did a stint with the federal government before I became a teacher. I'm still on a journey, and I just working through it.
So, I think you left a few things out there, and so I'm going to call your attention to the fact that you like to drink hot coffee in the middle of a heat wave. So I think you need to share those gems with our listening audience. Tell us.
Yeah, so I'll show up at Starbucks in the middle. Last year, we actually had a heat wave where it was 50 degrees Celsius. I'm not a math teacher. Wow. My best friend is, so
that's
you'll have
hot,
to do
though.
The conversion.
Yep.
It's very, very hot. And even then, I was walking up to Starbucks, and I'd like, I'd like a hot black coffee. And they're like, are you sure it's hot? I'm like, absolutely, a hot black coffee. Thank you very much. So, yeah.
All right. I think that's important because that's going to resonate with some of our listeners who are like, that's right. Or
that's right.
If you're up here where I am in New England, there are diehard iced coffee drinkers. So no matter how cold it gets, they will walk into Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts and they will order that iced coffee and bring it to school. And I'm over here like, I'm always hot, but I'm like, how could you do that during the winter?
And that's my daughter. And it's funny. So I little things that we each are saying is reminding us that I'm Canadian and you're American. So you mentioned Dunkin' Donuts. So up here in Canada, Tim Hortons is like the iconic coffee shop. I can't stand their coffee.
Oh,
I do not like their coffee at all. In fact, there's a story. This young girl came to my classroom, and I'd forgotten that we had not met yet. And she was holding a Tim Hortons cup. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you can't come in my classroom. That's not allowed. And she thought I was serious, and she started to get a little like panicky on her face. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, honey, no, it's okay. Like, it's okay. And then finally somebody said, she really doesn't like Tim Hortons. I don't suggest you bring any more. It was... there's been so many jokes over the years. Kids who put like Tim Hortons cups on my desk when I'm not looking, and it's just
Wow. I mean, I was just about to tell you how I drove past. So we had Tim Hortons in the States for a little while. It was like originally Best Eaten Donuts, which is like a childhood memory with my daddy who went there. And I was driving in a different part of, I'm new to Connecticut, and I think it was yesterday. And I'm like, we drove by. I'm like, Tim Hortons, they have, and it was old. The thing has been closed for a very, very long time.
Right.
And the sign is still up. So I had to laugh at that. And then you just mentioned Tim Hortons. So, and actually for anybody listening, everybody should just be an extra grateful for Vanessa joining us today because you just had your last day of school, right?
Yes. My last administrative day. Yeah. So the students have been out for a while, but I literally pushed everything off my desk into a big box. And that's how I clear my desk every year. So
it was that yesterday or today?
That was today, yeah.
That was literally today, so it is June 30th. Thank you for clearing off your desk, coming home, and joining us on the podcast. We go. Also, when you said it could be Thursday afternoon, and to me that meant like 5 o'clock, but really it's like 2 your time. So
it is 2 o'clock my time, yeah.
The world doesn't all center around New England, Kayla.
Yeah.
I'm a typical New England born and raised. But
I'm just wondering, people may not know exactly where British Columbia, Canada is. So it's on the west coast. Yeah, it's on the west coast of Canada. The only way to get farther west would be to go to Vancouver Island. And so I live about 10 minutes away from the Washington state border.
Got it. That's great. It's good perspective too, because there might be nuances in the episode where it's like, I think there are so many similarities, but like there are also probably a few differences in that. But like it's funny because on TikTok, I feel like we're just all from the same. We're all from TikTok,
right?
Like
exactly.
This place that exists where we're just all from TikTok, and I'm like, I don't even like that person might be from across the world, but to me, it's just we all exist on TikTok. And it's one place.
We're all neighbors.
Yeah. But I really I'm excited about this episode because like you, I've been in education now. I think this was my 17th year, but 20 years total. I started off as a TA and went back to school and then became a teacher. And I have found this year that I assumed as I went into like coaching teachers this year, it expanded that I would be working a lot with first-year teachers, second-year teachers, especially because they really didn't have the opportunity to have a full student teaching experience because of COVID, a lot of them. So that was actually my assumption of who would be reaching out. Who ended up reaching out to me a lot was actually teachers who have been teaching for about 10, 11, 12, 13, 16 is like the magic number to 18
Right.
years, saying, whoa, it's so different.
Yeah.
And the last 2 years have been really hard. So that's been something that I didn't expect to emerge as like a little theme this year, but it has been. And so, I enjoy your content so much on TikTok and know that there's just so much joy you bring from it. And so I would love to hear, you shared a little bit about, that you teach and some things that kind of make you you, but can you tell us a little bit about your journey in teaching?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I worked for the federal government for 15 years. And then because I was passed over for a job, I thought, fine, I'm going to go to university. So, I was in my late 20s. My children were quite literally babies at the time. And so I graduated, I was 31. That's about 2006. And I got a job right away. And not in an area where I thought I would be working. I had planned to work in inner city schools. And ended up working in an independent school, totally outside the plan that I had. But my husband became quite ill shortly after I started teaching, and it became a great community for me to be. He ended up passing away 3 years later.
Oh, sorry.
And they just surrounded me, and they surrounded my two children who I brought to the school. And it's grown from there. And I've often thought, well, the needs are so different between public and independent, inner city and otherwise. And yet they are all still young people trying to make it to the other side. I in my independent setting, I literally have had almost any situation with a student I possibly could have imagined. The things that they come and tell me at the end of the day, or the chats that we have. And it's interesting because, I figure I'm going to be here until it becomes obvious that this is no longer the place for me. And this year has affirmed it even more so, that the students, I'm there for the students, but also I've got my branch of friends has kind of expanded a little bit this year with other colleagues. And we're talking about these things, the things that are a struggle, the things that we're trying to figure out. And the thing is, we're trying to figure this out while we're trying to help people who are trying to figure this out. So, yeah. So I've been there for, this is my 16th year of teaching, and mostly focused on French. And then, this year will be the Indigenous Studies class.
That's amazing. It's so funny because it's fun to get to know people through podcasting, right? So like we're essentially kind of just meeting for the first time. And so when you say, first of all, I'm very sorry to hear about your husband. That must have been incredibly difficult, and I'm glad that you found community in your school. That's beautiful. And I know that for some people listening, that's not the case, and anytime you can find community in your school, just to recognize that as a blessing, because that really is something that can help immensely when something really tough in life outside of school has happened, and to lean on the people. It's wonderful that community is there.
And I think too, for me, we talk about my husband, I'm remarried now, and the kids are now grown up. So it's been 13 years, and we still talk about him every single day. And I didn't tell my students that's a topic you can't ask about. And I had some students come to his funeral, and I've had kids say, I want to ask you some questions, but I don't want to be rude. And I said, hey man, you can ask me any question you want. If I don't want to answer it, I won't answer it. And that's okay. And so it's been a way to, as obviously I was processing things, but for students to see, this is how you can walk through some things, and share what you want to share, keep to yourself what you want to keep to yourself. But I really think, I really think showing them that I'm a real human being, I think has been helpful. So.
Absolutely. And, something else you said is when you said that you pictured yourself teaching in an inner city school, and you ended up in an independent school in a different environment. I went right into inner city schools in Rhode Island and loved every second. And then I guess it was probably 12 years in, I had been a principal for 4, and then I left the district, and I didn't really have a plan. And it wasn't because it had nothing to do with the kids. I loved being there, but I ended up, there was a 1-year interim position in my hometown in Rhode Island. And I was like, that's perfect, because right now I'm really not sure, if I still want to be a principal moving forward at some point. I just didn't know. So I ended up taking the interim assistant principal role in my hometown, which was a completely different environment. And I honestly was like, I don't know how to, the only reason I know how to exist here is because I grew up here.
Right.
But I don't know how to be a teacher or a school leader in this environment. And quickly I learned that kids are kids.
Yeah.
Kids are kids. And so when you said that, it struck me because I came to that realization too. Now, of course, the environments were very different.
Yes.
But kids were, kids are kids, and they were all, like you said, just struggling and on their own journey of learning and growing and making mistakes and trying to get it right and getting it wrong sometimes, and needing the adults in their lives to help guide them to the other side, sometimes some pretty big mistakes or things that weren't going right for them. So when you said that, I was like, I had that experience too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask you before we get into some students, actually, no, let's go to students. I've noticed you post a lot about your students, and you've already talked so much about them in the episode. And I think that's one of the things that drew me to you on TikTok, was because I could tell just like your students light you up.
Yeah.
And that's the same for me. Like, put me around a kid, and that's where I'm my happiest.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that. Like, how do you support, you already mentioned some of it, but like, what do you do to support your students? Especially when you mentioned that we can build that in, like in the past couple of years, I think you said something that I think will resonate with every single listener, is that kids coming back to school this year after the trauma or experience of the past 2 years, we've all seen the increased, the different behaviors that are happening, and just forgetting how to be students is kind of what everybody's kind of classified it as. Can you talk to us about what you've seen and then how you've been supporting your students?
Yeah, I think over the last couple of years, because in so many ways we've been isolated, there's a lot of community events in my own community that, some are on a regular basis, some of them once a year. Like, so many of those have not happened. Students who are really involved in sports or in band or in music and choir, in art clubs, like, they haven't had an opportunity to do that. And I actually feel that there is, you'd mentioned the word trauma, in now, how do I get back into it? And who am I now? Because I haven't been doing that for so long. And so, I just try to find ways each class is different. High school, I see a bunch of different kids all day long. And so trying to find out what are the things that really connects with those kids. And so this year, we were able to start back up. We have a girls' lunch, and I started a couple of years back, and it's a once-a-month thing. And we have snacks, and sometimes we do crafts. And you'll see the one day I was trying to roll up a flower with one hand, because that was going to be the craft that we were doing. And so I was like, hey, you guys, this didn't work out. I'm sure yours will be better. And laughter and what have you, and burning of fingers with hot glue. High school students. Oh my gosh. It was crazy. But they come in, and sometimes we're listening to Taylor Swift music, and I've had my fill for my lifetime. And sometimes they're just chatting, and international kids come in. My room is close to the international department, so I literally go over there and say, girls, come on, let's go. We're having lunch today. And that's been really cool, because you can see the students who sit in the hallway by themselves, don't talk to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. After a couple of those luncheons, they start peeking their nose in, and they start having a look, and then they have a sit down, and then they're showing up to Japanese Culture Club, which happens once a week in my classroom this year, as we had some international students from Japan. And those types of things. My grade 10 French class, I saw in the grocery store one day, there was Coke with coffee. I love one of those two ingredients. And so I said, well, we've got to try this. So I took some to school, and I had them try it with me. Well, that started once a week, bringing in something for us all to drink. We did kombucha. We did unsweetened pomegranate juice. They just couldn't believe that. We drank something called corn juice, which is kind of like cream corn, but also very wrong. We did lemon juice, like straight up lemon juice. The kids started giving suggestions, or they'd bring things in to be part of community. And just, I think one of the highlights for me, I'm always passing notes to kids. My love language is words of encouragement. And then they clue into this. And I had a girl this year. I told her I like shiny things. My husband had given me a gift, and I like words of encouragement. And so she made me a note on a piece of shiny gold paper, and then she folded it into a heart. And it's on my TikTok, and my heart just melted. I was like, wow, because that to me is like, that's a personal gift. They know you, but B, they want to share something of themselves, and because she made it. And so that was really cool. And then we actually used TikTok in my classroom. Sometimes we would make TikToks in class. And there was this one day where like 3/4 of the class was missing, either because of sports or drumline or drama or band. And I thought, well, I don't want to teach something twice. So I said to them, I said, I'll tell you what, I won't give you a big grammar test if you can make a TikTok in French and get Renee Wilkin, who is a Canadian singer in French, get her to give me a shout out. You won't get a grammar test. Well, they were using their dictionaries. They were asking each other questions. And that's the one where I'm wearing the red Starbucks apron because I found a Starbucks barista that has my name. And so she gave me her red. I wore it all week long. And so this apron. And then they had us running up to the camera, and they had one of Renee Wilkins' songs in the background. And yeah, and she gave me a shout out. So woohoo.
That's like amazing. So that's so there's so much there to like unpack. But one thing is, without assigning like a right or wrong to it, you have embraced technology and a platform that can cause a lot of headaches, right? For teachers or for like it can, right? And but you've embraced the fact that TikTok's here, so it's a thing.
It's a part of their lives.
So how has that experience been for you, and how have you seen that be a positive thing for you and your students in class?
Yeah, well, and it's interesting. Number one, I just like TikTok, and it was because of one of my students that I'm actually on. She made the account for me and then told me to take over. And so, but it's part of their life. But also as a teacher, I look at TikTok and go, that is a form of literacy. And so I try to teach my students reading, Great Expectations is a fantastic thing. It's a great book. I can suggest others. But there are so many different forms of literacy that we use on a daily basis that we may not give credit to or realize that there are skills and strategies that we use to be able to read those. And so as far as I'm concerned, if we can teach students how to use technology in a positive way, I think that's just the best. The only problem I've had with TikTok is that I have a particular student who trolls me on my TikTok while he's in my class. And I'm like, dude, like I'm right here. Like the physical me is right here. Why are you on my TikTok? So he actually made a comment once. He says, Mrs. Drew, your class is one of my top 10 favorite classes, which sounds lovely. But in a school year, he only has 8. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm 9 or 10 or what's going on there. So
I'd be like one of my favorite kids. That's just like, I know, like there's so much humor in that. And he's obviously very clever. So,
and I love joking around with kids. Like I joke with them, like 96% of what I say is like not real. And apparently I'm good at acting because I scared them one day and I was like, I'm so upset. And it was just joking and it was all funny. And half of them were in on the joke. And so they did like, I could hear them mumbling, is she still joking? Like, this is still the joke, right? And yeah, so I love embracing humor and having a good time in class.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So, I mean, that obviously like connecting with kids probably is one of the things that's made this year or the past few years. You actually said the last couple of years have solidified for you that where you are is where you belong and where you're meant to be. And, in the age of teacher quit talk or the Great Resignation or the mass exodus of teachers, which we know is a thing. It's a real struggle for some people and for some teachers for lots of different reasons. And on the flip side, there are a lot of people that are figuring it out, navigating it, whether it's intentional or just because there's some kind of environmental or circumstantial reason that they are still loving their job or finding the joy or whatever it is. It sounds like that happened for you and that you have actually been like, no, I actually really, really love it. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, I honestly can't. There's maybe one other job I can think of doing other than teaching. And that's kind of like my next step in my career journey. But I really feel like students, human beings in general, need to feel a sense of community. And when I have a student come up to me and say, Mrs. Drew, I hate French, but I really like coming to this class. This actually was one of my TikToks. It's because that student chooses to show up every day. And it's because that they know they know that they are part of a community. They belong here. We value them. And I always say to students, I don't value you because you get an A in my class. I value you for the things that you can't Google. Like really, if you think about it, much of the stuff that we teach in a curriculum, the content-based stuff, almost anybody can Google that with the phone that's in their pocket, which almost every one of these kids has. What's more difficult too, and I think some of the problems that we're seeing with students is because the technology does not always allow them to feel part of a community. And with us being separated so much and with things being canceled and we're just now starting to get back into things, I think they are seeking community. So first and foremost, I can let these students know that I value you and I cherish the fact that you spend time with us every day. And I appreciate the work that you put into showing up and being kind and being respectful and participating. And you know, I always encourage them to take learning risks, and I do the same thing. I try to find ways that I can take learning risks, and I show them when I fail epically, and we all have a little giggle. And you know, I says, but I've learned stuff even through this, and so I really feel they are seeking for a sense of community. And you know, we can take that to our teachers who are struggling. They want to feel like they're valued. They want to feel like somebody sees them. And I think for myself, it has been mentioned over the years that I drop notes into teachers' mailboxes, even if I don't see them all the time. And again, back to that words of encouragement, that's my thing that I like to do. And so, yeah, I just think that's what kids are really yearning for. And the rest will come. The rest will come. So,
I mean, I don't know what your like background or teacher prep program was like or taught you. And it was also, you know, like you said, 16 years ago was when you started teaching. I did my dissertation on the causes of chronic absenteeism in ninth grade students in urban school districts. And it was I think the causes of and solutions too. And I actually did focus groups with ninth graders, and they happened to be in my school. It was ninth graders who they missed between about 10 to 20% of the school year. They were on track to, because I did it, I think, probably in February. And so I had maybe 4 or 5 focus groups, all different. Those focus groups I did mostly ninth grade, but then I had a couple mixed grade levels just to compare. And though I was blown away by what they shared about. I asked them like the reasons why they might miss class or why they go to class. So like when they don't want to, what gets them there? Because for this group of students, like the promise of, oh, like if you have perfect attendance this week, you can have a cookie, you know, reward at the end of the week. That wasn't getting them out of bed in the morning to say, like, I really don't want to go to school, but you know what? I really want that cookie. I made fun of it because like that was something I had like thought of years ago when I was an administrator, like, oh, we'll do rewards, which fine. But like for kids who really have absenteeism issues, that reward is not the thing that's getting them there. And so I asked them, like, what is the thing? And they said, we know our teachers care. And I said, well, how do you know your teachers care? And they said, they just repeated pretty much everything that you just rattled off, which is, it's not about the grade. It's, I care that you're here. Or, hey, you weren't here yesterday. We missed you. Or, you know what? You weren't here yesterday, the day before. Take this so you can get caught up and just, this is where we are right now. I care that you missed what you have and I care that you're on track. Or I just happened to notice you weren't here. Or I'm really glad to see you in this community and we are a community. So all those things that you just mentioned that you do are the things that students who actually struggle to get to school say were the difference. Like, because in our, back then, and it still happens in that district, you track attendance by period. Right. So there were students who missed particular classes all the time and would go to other classes, and I'd be like, but that's like, you know, that's a really hard class, but your attendance in that class is actually really, really strong, but that's a really tough class. And you said you didn't even like it that much. What is it about that class? And they were like, well, so-and-so, the teacher really, they support me. Like, I noticed that even though it's really hard, they do things, they'll give me, they don't say graphic organizer, but it would be like a graphic organizer or something to help them understand, or they'll say, hey, stay with me after for 10 minutes and I'll catch you up, and just care that they learned it and were part of that community, they felt important, and that got them to those classes that seemed to be harder or that they might not have liked as much.
And I think that's part of it too. Like, I mean, as teachers, as educators, we're supposed to be able to notice when a student is struggling and come up with creative ideas, sometimes differentiated ways in which students can learn things. And I think having a variety of stuff, but also having a variety of things that aren't, I mean, kids need brain breaks. Our classes are 75 minutes long. And to ask a student to sit there for 75 minutes is quite difficult. And for me, like, I love lecture style learning. I love the prof talking, and I'll sit here and take notes. And I would be perfectly happy to do that as a teacher until I get a crazy idea, something fun to do. But they need brain breaks. And I think sometimes these little things that we do, you know, it boosts up the fun factor. It gives them that time to get out of their seats, to move around, to do something, and then to come back fresh to whatever it was that they were working on or what have you. And I think that is just so important to what we do. Now, having said all that, it's exhausting. I'll be honest. I come home at the end of the day and I am exhausted. And we were joking, you know, like I'm May tired in like December or whatever it was. And it is exhausting. It takes a lot out of us. But, you know, I've tried pulling back. It's not in me. And to be honest, I love these kids. I don't love this job. I mean, I do, but I love these kids. And when kids are coming to your husband's funeral, when kids are coming to special events, when kids ask you, like a couple of weeks ago, to go to their birthday tea, and then a couple of them who are there think it's really funny to call you by your first name, and you're like, yeah, that's Alchel. That is actually my name, so go ahead and use it. But like, yeah, you know, those types of things, I wouldn't give that up for anything.
Yeah. The relationship piece. So the relationship and connection seems to be, I mean, that's, I think, a prominent theme for kids and for teachers, right? To up the joy factor, or maybe the sense of purpose, like the sense of purpose for being there. So I noticed also, I had noticed in your TikTok videos, and also just from emailing with you, that you also do a lot to support teachers, not just in like, yes, you drop the notes in boxes and you encourage them, but you're also actually doing some other things to support teachers as well. Can you tell us about that?
It's interesting that you asked that question today, because I've gotten to know one of my colleagues a little better. It's her second year at our school. She's been a teacher for quite some time. And I'm also working on my master's right now. So I'm learning all these new ideas and these things I want to implement in my classes. And so I bring those ideas to conversations that I have with some of my colleagues. And today she gave me such a compliment. It actually floored me. I just didn't know actually what to say to her. She said, I have helped her to become a better teacher this year. And I was like, I was just looking for somebody to talk to and bounce ideas off of. And I just think, like, how amazing is that as teachers, we can have conversations about our practice. We can encourage one another to try new things. We can encourage one another when those new things don't go well, but we can also celebrate with one another when things do go well. And we can challenge each other to not become stagnant. After 16 years, there's things that I know work well that take very little energy, and I could probably get away with doing it. But I don't feel that those things are pressing me on to improve. I think my practice of a teacher should continue to improve up until the day I decide to stop teaching. And I think our teachers benefit, like our colleagues, as well as our students. And so that's kind of a journey I've been on for the last 2 years during this degree. And now I'm looking into coaching as the next step, and I've got this website going, just different ways that I can support teachers. So that's probably what you're leaning into, is that I've started this website. It's called We French Teachers, we as in OUI, yes, in French. And in part, I called it that because I wanted to say we are French teachers. And yes, you are a French teacher. In British Columbia, it's an English majority language part of Canada. So you may know that we are considered a bilingual country. Really, on the East Coast is where, with Quebec and New Brunswick and Ontario, that's where the majority of the French is spoken. And the farther east you get, it kind of, wanes a little bit. And so out here in British Columbia, it's difficult to find people who speak French. And so with there being such a shortage of French teachers, what ends up happening is we've got a couple of different streams of French programs. We've got Core French, which is kids who are taking all of their courses in English, but they're taking one block of French. And then we've got French immersion, which can either start in kindergarten or in middle school. And that's where everything is taught in French. So you are learning the language while you are learning this next curriculum.
Wow.
And that's what I did from grade 6 to 12. And it was simply because I have been enamored with languages since day one. And so being born in England and immigrating to Canada with my parents were like, why do you want to learn French? And I just was like, I just love languages. And so I'm considered bilingual. I've spent some time over in France, and I've spent some time in Quebec. In fact, I'll be there in a week. And I always thought I wanted to teach French immersion because my French is good enough to do that. And I realized that if I was in the public system, there's a good chance I probably would be a French immersion teacher. But then I got to thinking a couple of years ago, if all the really competent, as in like I have a lot of experience and I've studied this, how to teach a language, and I know the language, if all those teachers get sent over to French immersion programs, who's teaching the core French kids? Because the core French kids deserve a good French education as well. And I'm not saying I'm the best, but I want to make sure that my core French kids go through my program, and whatever their language skills are when they come out the other end, to feel that they received really good French teaching. And so core French has now become a part of my heart and my focus. And so this website was to help those teachers who perhaps didn't want to teach French, were just given French, and now they don't know what to do as far as teaching French, because that does happen. And with other classes and courses as well. And so my hope is that this website will be a place that they will come to where they can, if they need to grab a lesson plan, I'll have some up there, and they're more than welcome to just grab it and take it. If they've got a question of something that they'd like to dig into, whether it's a research thing they've heard about, or whether it's how do I teach this grammar? Or what I'd really love is for people to actually not focus so much on grammar and vocab, as much as I love it, but to infuse their language classes with culture, because you cannot separate those two. And so my project has really been about integrating Quebecois, French, Indigenous cultures, because they're all connected, into the language classroom. And so that's what I'm hoping this will be. I'm a big proponent of, I'm a big supporter of anything I make, you're welcome to take. And you're welcome to use it and change it however it works for you. You know, maybe one day when I write a book, I'll be selling those ones on Amazon or something. But but as far as anything I make, like I just made that planner, was my first kick at the can, and it's not perfect, but I'm so proud of it. And if somebody wants it, I will send it to them. So, yeah.
Well, okay, so I'm going to tell people to follow. What's your handle on TikTok?
Mrs. Drew _ teaches French.
So you need to go on TikTok, because if you go to Mrs. Drew _ teaches French, you'll see the TikTok with the planner, because I know I commented on it. I was like, that is amazing. That looks so good. So if you need a planner, absolutely. And then that's amazing that you're giving it away. I would say collect email addresses so that people can be on your email list. So that, well, I say that too, because I feel like what you're doing with your, I know you're just starting out with the website, but what you're trying to do for teachers, and I know it's, you're supporting French teachers. I feel like, though, there's so much there for all teachers, because when you I was just chuckling to myself, and gosh, some teachers that I've probably been a principal for, or maybe in the future would be an administrator for, and maybe in charge of like the teaching program and assigning classes, would probably be like, Michaela, that's not even funny, because you gave me a class I didn't want to teach. But you said, like, there are teachers who might not want to teach French, or might not have signed up to do that, and now they find themselves teaching French. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so relatable, because that's literally the experience of a teacher, right? It's like, I didn't sign up for this, and sometimes you're finding out like a week before.
So on that, in that vein, when I applied for this job, I'm like, if you need a French teacher, I'm it. If you need a foods teacher, like, do not be calling me. Ended up teaching 3 blocks of foods. And my very first lesson was, I lifted up this measuring cup, and I go, so they've told me this is a 1 cup measure. All right. If you can make something and eat it and keep it down to the bell, I'll give you an A. And that's how my first year went. So yeah, but you're absolutely right. So many of the things that we talk about in a language classroom can also apply to other languages, or can apply to other teaching stuff. So yeah. So if teachers happen to find the website, and it's in English, by the way, the website is in English. And there will be the odd French post, but then there'll be English that follows it. And so that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that's just a really cool resource. I love the We French Teachers. So remember, OUI, FrenchTeachers.com is really, really cool. And how can people email you? Is there like a way to contact you through the website?
So they can click on contact and then submit their email address and maybe a little comment, or you can email me directly at Vanessa at wefrenchteachers.com. So,
I am really grateful that you came on the episode today because, again, like I said, I saw you on TikTok, and I saw the content that you were putting out. It just comes across how much you love what you do, how much you care about your students, and like, not just, how much you care about how much you're humored by them, like how much joy they bring you, and like in all aspects, like from taking your ceiling tile and decorating it to like the things you might produce in class, the things that spontaneously happen. And then the fact that you're also supporting teachers in the ways that you are too, especially organically with the planner and just out there to help. I think it helps build the community of adults too, who, might have felt really isolated this past year, couple of years, and are looking for that in helping to find their joy again. So thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you very much for the invitation.
And everybody who's listening, please check out, you have to be on TikTok. I'm just going to say, you got to be on TikTok. I know people are worried their administrators and districts are going to find them. Just like pick a different name and like don't make crazy TikToks. But you have to be on it to at least lurk and look at all the great things on there and follow Mrs. Drew _teaches French, because there's great content there and you'll find a lot of joy. If you're looking to find that spark again, you're going to see a lot of that there. So with that, we'll say, how do we say, let's see. How do we say? I always say, until next week, take care.
You can say that in French, which is the shortened version of à plus tard, which is I'll see you later. So
I just love hearing Vanessa talk about building that strong community in her classroom and what that has done for her students and for her. We are going to be focusing on building that strong classroom community, also known as a really strong classroom culture, during our summer self-taught live event, which starts on July 14th, and into the fall as we build strong classroom cultures, because as we have heard all summer and really all year last year through our podcast episodes, it's one of the common threads that ties all of the positive teaching experiences together is when that strong classroom community and classroom culture exists. So we are actually going to be focusing on that. I can't wait to do it. Until next week, I hope you had a nice 4th and some nice time off, and continue to enjoy your summers. Till next week, take care.